the situation is not looking good in Zambia. The Zambian president, that is Hakainde Hichilema, seems to be making sure that he blocks opposition political party from filing a petition opposing his victory. You would understand that Zambia recently held elections. And in the midst of counting the elections, the Electoral Commission of Zambia mysteriously decided to stop the counting of the votes in that particular country, leading to reactions across the world. Hakainde Ichilema went on to announce himself as the winner with 60% of the votes, but that victory remains contested by Brian Muntayalwa Mundubile, who is the main opposition candidate. He says the victory of Hakainde Ichilema, just like what we have noticed in countries like Zimbabwe, is fraudulent. Greetings and welcome to your lovely channel, Vitonipani Global News. If you're watching us for the very first time, please do remember to press the red or black subscribe button so that next time when we beam live, you become the very first one to watch us. Meanwhile, the election drama in Zambia continues. Opposition presidential candidate Brian Muntayalwa Mundubila, I hope I pronounced it very, very well. I always fight with my brothers from Zambia, intends to challenge the presidential election results and the manner in which the electoral process was conducted. He now has only a few hours, 24 hours remaining to file his petition. Yet on the very day when he is expected to approach the Constitutional Court premises have been closed. For security reasons, staff have been instructed not to report for work, and the courts are reportedly surrounded by soldiers. These measures are effectively preventing Mundubile and his lawyers from filing their challenge within the legally prescribed period. If this were happening in Zimbabwe, there would be an immediate international outcry. The tragedy of the Zambian election is that it has exposed people who follow personalities rather than democracy, ideas, and principles. Even some members of the international community who routinely posture as defenders of democracy and human rights have been exposed by their silence because of their attachment to President Hakainde Hichilema. So-called academics, democracy activists, and human rights journalists who would be shouting if this were happening elsewhere have certainly lost their voices. Their silence confirms that for some people, democratic principles matter only when their preferred political personality is not in power. Even Robert Mugabe and Emerson Tambutso Mnangagwa at their worst never physically prevented their opponents from approaching the courts. They captured and compromised the judiciary, but their political rivals were still permitted to file their cases. In Zambia, the opposition is being physically prevented from reaching the courts before the deadline expires. This is not democracy, it is shameless assault on the constitutional right to legal redress. If President Hichilema genuinely believes that he won a free and fair election, he would allow Mundubile to present his evidence before the court and permit the judges to decide the case independently. Closing and militarizing the courts during the final hours of filing an election petition makes a Zambia's claim to democratic rule. Zambia's government will be named a regime for the next 5 years because that is what it is now. So this has been penned down by Hopewell Chinono, but indeed there is a lot that is happening. And also With me here, I have a memorandum to all staff members, Honorable Chief Justice, to Honorable Chief Justice of Honorable President, Constitutional Court, the Honorable Deputy President. It says, for security reasons, all members of staff are advised not to report for work today. Guidance will be issued in due course once the situation is contained. I thank you for your cooperation and understanding. Nalishebo Imata, MS. So this is the actual memorandum that has been actually given to all the workers at the courts in Zambia. And Wopol Chinono commenting about 3 hours ago, he says, what is happening in Zambia is completely unprecedented. Today, we've witnessed our entire judiciary being shut down, reportedly due to a security threat. Today also happens to be the final day for filing a presidential election petition to challenge the results of the 13th of August 2026 presidential election. Today may be the last day of our democracy. So this is what is happening in Zambia. There are many young professionals, you know, according to this is what was actually I'm following what is happening, and also one of the political leaders in Zimbabwe, that is Senator Jameson Z. Timber, has actually responded following the developments that are taking place in Zambia. He says the courts must remain accessible to democracy. This is addressed to Zambia by Senator Jameson Z. Timber. He says, I'm deeply concerned by reports emerging from Zambia that courts have been closed today following an alleged security threat at a particularly sensitive moment in the country's post-election process. Every state has a duty to protect its courts, judicial officers, and citizens against genuine security threats, but that responsibility must be exercised in a manner that does not extinguish or frustrate the constitutional rights of citizens. This is particularly important where strict time limits apply to challenges arising from an election. There are reports that the period within which challenges to the recently concluded presidential election may be lodged is either approaching its end or is presently at a critical stage. There are also reports that prospective litigants intends to approach the courts. If in these circumstances, the closure of courts without a clearly communicated alternative mechanisms for receiving urgent election petitions raises serious questions about access to justice and the integrity of the democratic process. An election does not end when the votes are counted is declared. The right of an aggrieved candidate or citizen to approach an independent court is itself an internal part of a democratic election. No person should lose a constitutional right because the state has made the institution through which that right must be exercised inaccessible. If the security situation genuinely requires physical court building to remain closed, the Zambian judiciary should urgently clarify how time-sensitive petitions can be actually filed rather. Alternatively, it should ensure that no litigant is prejudiced by the period during which access to the courts has been interrupted. Democracy requires both winners and losers to play according to rules known in advance. Closing access to the courts at the moment when an electoral challenge may be brought without providing an effective alternative would be like removing the goalpost just as your opponent is about to take a penalty. I therefore hope that the judiciary and the relevant authorities in Zambia will urgently clarify the situation and reassure Zambians, the region, and the international community that every person entitled to approach the courts will be able to do so without obstruction or prejudice. I have also noted reports and political speculation concerning the future of presidential term limits in Zambia. At this stage, I have not seen sufficient evidence to treat claims of an intended removal of presidential term limits as established fact, and they should therefore be approached with caution. But the democratic principle is worth stating clearly. Should any proposal arise to fundamentally alter presidential limits, such as consequential change, should enjoy the genuine and demonstrable consent of the Zambian people. A constitution is not merely an instrument available to those who temporarily command a parliamentary majority. It is a covenant between the state and its people, including generations yet to come. Zambia has historically played an important role in the democratic and constitutional developments of our region. What happens there matters beyond its borders. Southern Africa needs stronger democratic institutions, not weaker ones, open courts, not inaccessible ones, and constitutions whose authority ultimately rests with the people. The people must always have somewhere to go when they believe power has acted unlawfully. The court is the court. That place rather is the court, and its doors, physical or otherwise, must remain open. That is Senator Z. Timber responding on what is happening in Zambia. It's really concerning what Hakainde Hichilema is doing in Zambia. I know he has a lot of bootlickers both in Zambia and across the region, because people do not support principle. People tend not to support principle. It's very, very, very actually heartbreaking what we are hearing happening in Zambia. Let me get actually another media outlet report about this. That is ZimLive wrote something about this. Says Zambia shuts courts on final day for presidential election challenge. Where have you ever seen this? What is Hakainde Hichilema trying to do? Why shutting the courts? Why shutting the courts? When is the last day to be challenged? This is a man who fears. He is a pure detector. I've said, and I will repeat it again. There is no way this guy can convince us to be a Democrat, the way he is acting. So, according to ZimLive, says Zambia's High Court in Lusaka and other parts of the country have been closed and barricaded as crime scenes, disrupting court proceedings on the final day for filing a presidential election. The shutdown, which also affected lower courts, was announced in a memorandum from Chief Administrator of the Judiciary, Nalishebo Imata, advising all court staff not to report for work on Monday because of an alleged security threat. For security reasons, all members of staff are advised not to report for work today. They are repeating the memorandum that I have just read it to you. Let me, because the story continues. Guidance will be issued in due course once the situation is contained. Imata wrote in the memo dated August 24, the closures have resulted in court matters being adjourned and raised concerns over access to justice, particularly as Monday is the deadline for filing a petition challenging the results of August 13 presidential election. Former Law Society of Zambia President Linda Kasonde described the development as unprecedented and warned that it could have serious implications for democracy. What is happening in Zambia is completely unprecedented. Today, we have witnessed our entire judiciary being shut down, purportedly due to a security threat. Kasonde said, Today also happens to be the final day for filing a presidential election petition to challenge the results of the 13th of August 2026 presidential election. Today may be the last day of our democracy. The closures comes as opposition leader Brian Mundubile prepares to challenge President Hakainde Hichilema's re-election. The Electoral Commission of Zambia declared Hichilema the winner of August 18 on August 18 with 60% of the votes against 30% for Mundubile, securing the incumbent a second 5-year term. Mundubile said the results should not stand. Our campaign has documented serious irregularities, inconsistencies, and circumstances surrounding the conduct, counting, transmission, and declaration of results, he said in a statement issued from an undisclosed location. Mundubile had earlier said he was under protection because of threats. The election was largely peaceful on polling day, but tensions escalated after the vote, with about 11 people, including senior opposition figures, arrested in a government operation described as a crackdown on militia activity. Mundubile's National Reconciliation Party for Unity and Prosperity denied any links to militias. Vote counting was also suspended for several hours after the Electoral Commission reported attacks on polling stations and the theft of ballots. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, expressed concern over reports of arrest of opposition members and urged Zambian authorities to uphold due process. The European Union Election Observation Mission also raised questions about transparency in the results tabulation process. Observers reported extended breaks during the results tabulation process in almost half of the observations, as the returning officers seemed to wait and receive instructions from headquarters before announcing results. The mission said the court shutdown now threatens to further complicate the opposition's efforts to mount a legal challenge to the election results. The reason for the security alert and the circumstances surrounding the declaration of the court premises as crime scenes were not immediately clear. You know, your Hakainde Hichilema is actually now showing his true colors. Surely this cannot be celebrated by any San Zambians, later on San Africans. Let's support our brothers and sisters in Zambia. We are in solidarity with you at this crucial moment, and we pray that may democracy thrives at the end of the day. What is SADC turning to be? Thank you very much for watching us. If you're watching us for the very first time, please do remember to press the red or black subscribe button so that next time when we beam live, you become the very first one to watch us. You can financially support this channel by pressing the join button and be part of our members who are the heartbeat of this channel. You can equally do so by pressing the thanks button and send us stars. Okanqubane is signing off.